Hey everyone, welcome to this edition, the Friday edition of Just Parlays with Chris King. I'm Jim Williams, and Chris, fun night last night. I watched the Twin 250s at Daytona, and it was there's a lot of interesting stuff that went on. Only one big accident, and it didn't happen until the second race toward the end of the race, which perhaps, depending upon who you listen to, might have cost Joey Logano the race. If you listen to Joey Logano, it cost him the race. But I would be less than surprised if he didn't say that. So it was quite an entertaining evening seeing, the night before on Wednesday, we saw Rick Hendrick and his team get back in the saddle with what was going on with them. And then we saw a guy who's been a little, off the radar for a couple of years in Jack Roush and Roush Racing with Brad Keselowski, who's now his team partner, showing the way. So it does bode well for what might be an entertaining Daytona 500 that's coming up on Sunday.
Right. It's definitely going to be interesting. Of course, when you think of Daytona, the first thing I think about was, the
Chris, buddy, I can't hear you there. We're having some technical difficulties with your.
Weird. I don't know what's up with that.
Still can't hear you. See your mouth move, but.
I try turning the volume up. Is that any better? Okay. Let's see.
Chris is having a little technical difficulty with his microphone. Let me do something while we're getting our
I don't know what's
audio
going on
fixed, and that is, let's talk about our new deal from BetMGM. Okay, now BetMGM has an outstanding one for NBA fans. Now, of course, this weekend is the NBA All-Star game starting tonight. They're going to have the Futures game, and then tomorrow, of course, is the skills competition, and Sunday is the game. Now, here's the deal that they have for it, and that is that when you bet on the MGM app and deposit $10 in any of the NBA games, you get $200 if either team hits a three-point. Okay, so again, if you use your MGM app, place $10 and your banking position there. So if you put it in your account, then they're going to give you $200 anytime either team hits that any team hits a three. Let me try that again. Use your app, BetMGM app, then place a bet of at least $10 on any NBA game, and you get $200 if either team hits a three-pointer. Okay, now this does not count if you're betting on the three-point tournament this Saturday night, but it will count Monday when they get back to Monday or Tuesday when they get back to the NBA. So great, a great deal from our good friends at BetMGM. Remember that you must be 21 years or older to play, and always wager responsibly. Okay, so that's what we're looking to do. And let's see if we got Chris's mic fixed. Chris, are you still there, buddy?
Now, see, Jim, everybody has.
Tell you what, Chris. Why don't you log out and log back in? And by that, we can hopefully have your mic fixed. Okay, fair enough?
All right.
So, Chris is gone for a minute, but won't be long. I'm certainly not doing this show solo. He'll be back, and we'll be able to hear him. So, that'll all be good. And right now, let's take a look and see what we got in the way of comments. Okay. Oh, Ryan Page, you can hear him. No, Jim, we can hear him. Okay, you can hear him. I can't. Interesting. Okay. John, due to yesterday's IUPUI win over Robert Morse by 10 and scoring 60 points, so we no longer have moving day. There you go. Let's see what else. You guys are telling me that you can hear them. I don't know why I couldn't. Normally, I can. Minnesota Wild home today, getting 1.5. That's a college fun bet, John. Wait till Chris comes back and we'll see. All right, here comes Chris. And Chris,
Yeah, everybody could hear me before. I don't know why you can't.
tell you what, folks, we're having some interesting technical issues. Let me leave. Let me see if I can bring Chris back. Interesting. All right. Don't go anywhere. We will be right with you, okay?
So apparently Jim's having technical difficulties because everybody else can hear me, right? As far as the Minnesota Wild, yeah, I like the Wild tonight myself. I've actually got them listed on the page as we get there. John, yeah, it's a disappointing night I'm sure for everybody that IUPUI beat Robert Morris yesterday, especially winning on the road. Maybe that open tryouts paid off for them, and maybe they found somebody that can play basketball. It was definitely a scary concept to see Robert Morris only score 56 points. But what can we say? It's Robert Morris, and if there's anything we can talk about them, they've been consistently inconsistent all year. I mean, they've pulled a couple of upsets and then turned around and tanked it out when it mattered. So congratulations to IUPUI for finally beating a team from Division I. That means the world is probably coming to an end tomorrow. John wants everybody to talk bad about Jim, so, you know. And yeah, Ryan, the NBA has been unpredictable. A lot of it is the situation where you don't know who's going to suit up from night to night because these guys get marked as questionable or then they get pulled out at the last minute. Or they're marked as probable, and then all of a sudden they're not going to play. Prime example, just look at Miami's roster on a nightly basis, or with the Lakers, you don't know if LeBron's going to play, or if situations like that, then you had Anthony Davis get hurt. On the plus side, you know, we did say that Dallas was going to beat New Orleans, and that panned out. I was disappointed with the way Milwaukee played against Philadelphia. I figured the way Philadelphia has played of late, that especially giving up 132 to Boston, that the Bucks would have wiped the floor with them, especially playing at home. But I guess fatigue must have gotten the better of Milwaukee in that case. Anybody watch the Clippers Rockets yesterday? That was a real great game, wasn't it? I guess it was a good game if you were a Clippers fan, or if you bet on the Rockets to lose, because that game was over in a hurry. Again, the Rockets showing how well they play defense, giving up 142 points. I was worried about the fact that the line was 10.5 points in that game, but I mean, the Clippers were up 9 after the first quarter, and in the second half, the third quarter, they outscored Houston 36-20, and just Houston is a bad basketball team. I mean, there's no other way around it at this point other than say Houston is bad. I think, everybody wants to talk about seeing, the Suns or the Warriors play a 7-game series. I'd like to see the Rockets and the Pistons play 7 games just to see what's worse, Detroit's offense or Houston's defense. I should start a poll about that just to get a take on what everybody thinks about that particular situation. What games did you guys focus on last night? I know I caught the end of the Montana State Eastern Washington game. I thought Montana State was going to win. They were down 2 at the end of overtime. 0.3 of a second left. They inbound the ball. I know they say you can't catch and shoot in 0.3 of a second, but they were slow on the clock yesterday. And if you watch the replay, the guy from Montana State got the shot off before the red light went on. But the officials stuck to the ruling where you can't get a shot off in that span of time where you after catching the ball on an inbound, and waved it off. Just goes to show you how shaky officiating has been this season in college hoops. We saw it the other night with Duke and Wake Forest with the basket that looked like offensive interference that was overturned. It gave Duke the win. And you're right, Matt. Last night, the Rangers and the Blues. I can't believe the Blues played that poorly against Montreal. I had that one pretty much locked down and figured that, St. Louis was going to win that one in a rout. But, of course, they had to go and stick it to us. And, John, you were right on that one because you said that Detroit was going to upend the Rangers 3-2, and that's basically what happened in a shootout. So,
Okay, can you hear me, Chris?
I can hear you.
All right, good. I can hear you. Tell you what, let's start things over just real quick. Welcome to Winners and Whiners. Technical difficulties, but you guys are hanging in there. Greatly appreciated. It's a Friday edition, and I'll let Chris get back to what he was doing, which was explaining something to someone. So there you go.
Oh, we were just talking about some of the stuff that happened last night around, sports. Ryan, sometimes, doing two teams is fine. I know that some people like to do 3 and 4. It's just you have to remember the more parts you throw into it, the more ways you can get derailed. I'm sure. I guess if you got a lot of teams that you're big fans of that you want to try to run together, you can. But just remember that as they say, with great risk comes great great power comes great responsibility. With great lengths of parlays, the greater the risk that somebody's going to screw you over. We're looking at you, St. Louis.
Yeah. It's been my experience that usually when you do those kind of things, you go for one of the 3. One of them is going to mess up, because again, as you said, with great risk comes with great reward. But the other part has to do with the fact that you don't always get the wonderful situation where everybody hits for you. Sometimes it's better to pick 2 things that you feel really good about than 4, where 3 you feel really good about it, and the 4th one you're not so sure about it.
Yeah, and if that's the case where there's 3 you feel good about and there's 4 and the 4th one you're shaky on, just go with 3.
Right, exactly.
I mean, I put up a 4 because they like for what we do to have a 2 and a 4, and then
right.
The one at the end you can just pick whatever you want. Like out of the 10 that we put up yesterday, I think 7 of them were winners. So I mean, you could have put something together out of that. I mean, thanks Brooklyn for not showing up, making the Wizards look like a capable basketball team.
Which is doing something.
Yeah, and we just talked about Milwaukee, how I was disappointed with the way they played against Philadelphia, and I was talking to them about Montana State. They were down 2. There was 0.3 of a second left. They inbounded the ball, and you know how the ruling is: you can't catch and shoot in 0.3 of a second. Well, you can catch and shoot in 0.3 of a second if you're that slow on the clock.
Right.
And that's Eastern Washington. They were the home team, and they were still slow on the clock. The guy got the shot off for Montana State that would have tied the game, but they waved it off because they stuck to what the rule is instead of looking at the replay. If the replay shows you get the shot off, it's not Montana State's fault that they were slow starting the clock.
Right.
But they got shafted.
We see that Joaquin did good yesterday. Thank you.
Yeah, Joaquin, who did you hit on yesterday, just out of curiosity?
Mm-hmm. Chris, to your point, I did a game in northern Iowa one time, and northern Iowa was down by a point, and they had a very favorable clock guy at the northern Iowa, and in 2.5 seconds they hit a 3-pointer and won the game. So, and that's going the length of the court. That's not just an inbound from the side. So you never know, and sometimes you get those favorable clock situations when teams at home. You seldom get them when you're on the road.
But that was the kicker. Montana State was the road team, and Eastern Washington was the home team, and they were still slow getting the clock off. You figured they would have just run it off as soon as you threw the ball in.
Right.
But then Montana State they didn't count the basket, so they ended up losing.
I've seen that too. I've seen it where the road team wins a game where you're sitting there going, if I were the guy that was running the clock, wouldn't I want to get that move quicker? There's John Senna was saying he did a live bet in the second half yesterday, I guess, in the Utah game.
Yeah, that was a wild game over there. Some of these teams, you look at them and you're like, I don't know what happened to Stanford. I thought they were going to win that game easily, and then they fell apart. You scored 3 points, I think, in the final 6 minutes or something like that. And you're not going to win basketball games like that. Speaking of teams that took a dump, Northern Colorado took a dump. I thought they were going to win after they scored, like we said, they scored 32 points in 5.5 minutes against Southern Utah to win, and then they scored 58 points yesterday to lose to Idaho State.
Here's Matthew has an interesting question, and that is, do we plan on tuning in for all the All-Star festivities or bet on it?
The All-Star games are so fickle because nobody's going to play defense at all. I mean, usually the safe, I don't even know what they've set the over at for those. I imagine it's probably like 3 billion. Because that's basically what they boiled out. It's at 321.5. So that just tells you that, look, we're not going to play defense. Even 321.5 is probably low based on what we've seen in previous All-Star games. I mean, what was last year's? Didn't end up like in the 170s or something like that.
I'm curious, Matthew, if you're asking about, they do prop bets, right? Or do they put bets on the skills competition and
I'm pretty sure they do.
And the slam dunk and 3-point play and all that sort of. I mean, the interesting part of that, Matthew, is that it's such, as Chris was saying, it's a fickle situation. You just don't know who's going to have a hot night in that particular night. There have been times when I'm absolutely certain that a certain player is going to win a slam dunk contest, and they don't, because they just don't perform, or they've done it so many times everybody there is not impressed. It's hard now to get a dunk that gets everybody excited. But
the other thing that I don't like now about the All-Star game is they went to that Elam scoring, which is what they do in the TPT, that big tournament that they have during the summertime, where it's X points over whatever the score is after 3 quarters. I'm not a big fan of that. Then you're playing to a target score instead of actually playing out the clock. And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm just saying I don't like that particular format. I mean, if you're going to make it an All-Star game and you're going to play 48 minutes, then play 48 minutes. Don't play 36 minutes and then go, we're just going to next team to score or reach this target number wins. I mean, that's just stupid.
Mm-hmm. I think this is where Malkin is explaining where he got his big win.
Yeah. And, Nevada, they were playing, San Jose State? That's probably one of the few teams that you would back Nevada against, because the Spartans are so bad. And that game was blowout city written all over it. The sad part was that Nevada played better against them in San Jose than they did at home.
Well, things happen, right? And they happen to people. Let's get to the board and see what's going on today.
Yeah, take note. There's not a lot of games that everybody's excited about because, it's Friday and everybody plays on Saturday for the most part. So we see a lot of teams that we're not necessarily used to. I mean, these two you're used to because we talk about the Horizon League a lot.
Right.
Oakland favored by 4 at home over Wright State. They're trying to avenge the 75-64 loss they took to the Raiders at Wright State back on February 5th. Remember, that was back when they had the snowstorm up in the Northeast. So those teams were supposed to play. They both had games Thursday. They were moved to Friday, so then they had to play Friday and then Saturday.
Right.
Wright State 15-12. Oakland is 18-8. They're 8-0 at home. These are two teams near the top of the standings in the Horizon League. Wright State 12-6, Oakland 11-4. Oakland 67th in scoring offense, 75.9 points a game. They're 173rd in field goal percentage. They're 65th in 2-point shooting, and they're 6th in free throws. We can't stress that enough. There's too many teams out there leaving points on the floor all over the place, either costing you the potential to cover, or in some cases costing them a chance to win. Look at Boise State. Look at the close games they've lost because they don't knock down free throws. And that's going to cost somebody come tournament time. When you face a team that's from a mid-major that makes free throws, you're going to see some big team, could be Purdue, because Purdue inevitably finds a way to lose to teams that whenever we talk about how good they are. Somebody's going to lose to a team from a mid-major that nobody's ever heard of, unless you watch our show, because they knock down free throws. And that's going to be – then everybody's going to be like, well, how come we never heard of this team? Well, because you're brainwashed into thinking that the only teams that you can see are the teams that are on ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN3, ESPN48, and
the power conferences,
and Fox Sports 39. But there's a lot of good teams out there that people don't know about, and you'll see them come March Madness. We talk about Vermont, we talk about Wyoming, we talk about Colorado State. Those are all teams you're going to see. They're going to cause issues for people.
Well, if there's one thing, if there's one thing, Chris, I was just going to say, if there's one thing Chris and I have stressed, and Chris has been very good with the stats on it every time that he puts up a game, it's the fact that we can't stress enough that free throws, when you've got two relatively good teams facing each other, for that matter, relatively bad teams facing each other, that if the game comes down to free throws, you're going to want to know which one of those two teams is going to be, better from the line. And Chris gives you that in pretty much every analysis that he does. And it's important because, frankly, how many games have we seen over the years that have come down to free throws? And you're sitting there at home throwing stuff at the television going, how could he miss that free throw when the game's on the line? Well, it happens. Now, as I said, Chris has been fantastic at giving you at least, and that's probably one of the most overlooked statistics when people bet, is they don't pay attention to the free throw percentages on the teams that they, wager on. And invariably comes down to a game where it's decided by free throws, and that's the one thing they miss. So pay attention, boys and girls. Circle that. When Chris gives it to you, it's an important stat.
Well, I mean, if you look, like we'll just use Boise State as an example. Mm-hmm. Boise State is 20-6, but if you look at it against the spread, they're only 13-12. Mm-hmm. If you look deeper into Boise State's issues, and they have issues,
right?
They are 350th in the country in free throw shooting. There's only 358 teams, and all the ones below them, minus maybe Army, because Army's okay, suck. Mississippi Valley State, Maryland Eastern Shore, McNeese State, Eastern Illinois, who we've talked about as a doormat repeatedly, right. Columbia, who we'll get to in a few minutes, Nicholls State, and Sam Houston State. Those are the teams worse than Boise State. You're not going to see any of those teams playing in March Madness. And if Boise State doesn't fix their free throw problem, you're not going to see them around very long either. And Leon Rice is going to be like, but come on, we won 20, 22, 23 games. Well, so what? You lost in the first round because you can't knock down a free throw to save your life.
Chris, here's a quick question from our buddy Kathy. 16. Kathy, I'll tell you what, hold on to that thought, because if you pay attention over the next few minutes, Chris is going to hit on a whole bunch of stuff that I think if you wait for a minute and just kind of take some stuff down, that's a question that I think will be better answered toward the end of the show than right now. So hang with us, Kath. We promise that we'll get to you. And Chris, here's a quick one from our buddy Ryan. He wants to know about Princeton. A couple of points tonight, something fishy.
Yeah, I don't get why Princeton is only favored by a couple of points. I know Brown plays tough basketball at home. But still, when you look, Brown is still only 12-13. They beat Cornell on the road. But before that, they escaped Dartmouth by 2 points at home. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. I know Brown played tough at Princeton last month. They lost 76-74. But I like Princeton there. I think, only giving 2 points is a boon for the Tigers. I mean, Princeton, you talk about an Ivy League team, but, they're an Ivy League team that has actually played some power teams. They played Oregon State, which doesn't mean a whole lot because Wayne Tinkle's team has been terrible. But they lost to Minnesota in double overtime. They beat South Carolina. They beat Drexel. They beat some teams from the Patriot League, and they've held their own in conference play. They're 7-2. Their 2 losses were a 6-point loss to Yale, who's played well this year in the Ivy League, and a 5-point loss at Cornell. And foreshadowing, kids, Cornell's coming up, and Cornell's a good basketball team. So, I mean, you're not talking about a team that is getting beat by bad teams. You look at their losses, like I said, they lost to Minnesota in double overtime. They lost at Monmouth. They lost to Hofstra by 4, and then they had those 2 losses in the Ivies. Princeton, they're still running the same Pete Carrill offense that they've run for, an eternity?
Yeah.
I mean, Mitch Henderson is running the program now, but I mean, they're still playing Pete Carrill basketball, and It works. So if it's not broke, don't fix it.
By the way, Nathan chimed in and said he's sorry he's late to class. He was doing extra homework. We do not grade down for when you do your homework. And, Nathan was a big winner yesterday. So good for you, Nathan. We're happy when we see our gang out there win. Let's move on from.
Don't forget to send all your money to me because
there you go. His PayPal account is in the show box below. All right. So let's move on from Oakland to Wright State. Where are we going next, boss?
Well, we just talked about it.
We talked about it. Cornell.
And I can't figure this one out either. Granted, I know Cornell is below 500 on the road, but how are you an underdog going to Dartmouth when you're a Dartmouth team that is 5-15? You're 2-7 in the Ivies, and you're only 2-4 on your own floor. What of those numbers means that you should be favored over anybody? I don't even think I'd favor Dartmouth over IUPUI.
That'd be a toss-up, yeah.
But, I mean, look at the difference in scoring. Dartmouth, 286th in scoring offense, 66.9 points a game. They're 316th in field goal percentage. They're 300th in two-point percentage. They're middle of the pack in three-point shooting. I'll give them that. Meanwhile, they are you're facing a Cornell team that is 9th in scoring offense at 81.2 points a game. They're 40th in field goal percentage at 47-1. They're 9th in two-point field goal percentage, 57.4%. They are 18th, knocking down 9.9 threes a game. They're 14th in three-point attempts, 28.1. They're 114th in three-point shooting. Cornell, 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 as an underdog. They're 6-2 against the spread in their last 8 after a straight-up loss. They're 18-6 in their last 24 on the road with the teams with a home winning percentage below 400. Dartmouth 1-7 in their last 8 as a home favorite. They're 0-4-1 in their last 5 following a straight-up loss of at least 20 points. John says, isn't that a red flag that they're an underdog?
Not necessarily, John.
I mean, Cornell beat Dartmouth by 8 at Cornell. I believe it was last month. Let me double check the date. Yeah, January 2nd. I know that, Cornell's, like I said, they're coming off a 1-point loss to Brown. They lost to Penn by 5. But they also beat Brown on the road. They beat Harvard at home. They beat Princeton at home. They beat Columbia at home. Dartmouth, I don't get what Dave McLaughlin's problem is. They started 3-1. They have a win over Georgetown. That's their best win of the year, if you want to count that. But since they started 3-1, Dartmouth is 2-14. I don't have faith in Dartmouth. Dartmouth's best chance is to play at the snail's pace that they do. They're 338th in tempo, and hope that Cornell misses all their shots from outside. If Cornell hits 7 or 8 threes or anywhere close to their average, then Dartmouth is going to get buried. I think the only reason they're favored is because this game is in the Lead Arena, which is not a big gym. It only seats about 2,100 people.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not like you're getting a big home court advantage there, because most of those people are, the Ivy Leagues, they don't necessarily turn out for basketball. They're more into turning out for hockey, unless you're Harvard, Yale, Penn, Princeton, or I guess now Cornell, because Cornell's played good basketball of late. I just don't have faith in Dartmouth. I'm taking the points and walking away laughing because I don't understand why Dartmouth would be favored over anyone.
No, and you're absolutely right there. Dartmouth, the big green, is going to lose to the big red tonight.
Ryan says it makes you wonder if the mob's involved with the Ivy League games.
Ryan, as funny as that may sound, there's heavy betting on the Ivies. So, you may be onto something there, buddy. You may be onto it. All right, let's move on, Chris. Let's go to the ice, I guess, right? Yeah,
because it's a light schedule for everybody with no NBA. Yeah. The Stars are on the road. The puck line gives it a plus 170. The money line is minus 160 over the Blackhawks. The Stars 26-19 and 2. 9-12-1 on the road. The Blackhawks 18-25-7. Braden Holtby 9-10-1 with a 278 goals against, a 912 save percentage. He's supposed to be in net. I would personally start Jake Ottinger myself. Marc-Andre Fleury 16-17-3, 288 goals against, 920 save percentage, 3 shutouts for the Blackhawks. Chicago beaten 7-4 last night by Columbus, so they're playing the second game of a back-to-back here. Dallas hasn't played since Tuesday when they beat Colorado in that game at the Ball Arena, where we all were surprised that the Avalanche only scored 1 goal in losing 4-1. Dallas 16th in goals per game, 2.96. They're 20th in goals against, giving up an average of 3 per game. The Blackhawks 30th in goals per game, 2.42. Anybody that's watched us when we talk about the NHL knows the two teams that they're better than when it comes to putting the puck in the net. That being our good buddy Euler's Arizona Cactus and the Montreal Canadiens.
Nobody's
they might as well call themselves the Montreal formerly known as Canadiens, because
right.
I'm pretty sure Jacques Plante and everyone are, disowning the franchise for what it is right now.
Mm-hmm.
Blackhawks 24th in goals against. The Stars 4-0 in their last 4 as a road favorite. They're 5-0 in their last 5 against teams with a losing record. They are 5-0 in their last 5 on the road. They're 2-8 in their last 10. Or the Blackhawks 2-8 in their last 10 playing the second game of back-to-back. And they're 0-5 in their last 5 as home underdog. I like Dallas here.
It's funny. It's Braden Holtby and Marc-Andre Fleury 5 years ago. That would be a very tempting situation because both of them at that point were playing outstanding in the net. But, they're two guys on the back 9 of their career at this point.
Right. Back 9 and headed to the clubhouse.
Right. The 19th hole. Yeah. So from Dallas and Chicago, we go to.
Well, real quick, Tom does have a valid point. Sometimes line makers have information that's not available to the public, but everyone that I've talked to about that, it doesn't make sense to anybody. So either Brian Earl is playing his cards real close to the vest, and somebody that's a Cornell backer or something knows that a guy's not going to play or something, or else to use the segment that Steen and Reichel used, odds makers were drunk. Because, we saw this the other day when we saw Delaware play James Madison.
Right.
And I said I had no idea why Delaware was only favored by 6, because they had already beaten James Madison on the road by 16, and they were playing at home, and then they probably went out and waxed them by 21. So sometimes the money just drives it one way or the other, and like Jim said, there's heavy betting in the Ivy, so that line can swing, at a moment's notice, and it's something you got to watch out for too.
So we go from the Stars and the Blackhawks.
Everybody's talking about the Wild. The Wild,
Mm-hmm.
They're a plus 110 on the money line. If you go with the puck line at plus 1.5, it's a minus 225. The Panthers 33-10-5 overall, but they're just 10-7-5 on the road. They did win the other night over Carolina in overtime, much to my chagrin. The Wild are 30-12-3. They're 16-3-1 at home. Sergei Bobrovsky, of course, 24-4-3 with a 254 goals against, a 919 save percentage, and a shutout in net for Florida. Cam Talbot, 19-9-1, a 286 goals against, a 912 save percentage, and 1 shutout for Minnesota. Interesting. It's going to be a clash of offenses. Florida leads the league in goals per game with 4.06. The Wild are third with 3.78. Both teams middle of the road when it comes to keeping the puck out of their own net. But a big stat there, Jim. The Wild average 4.55 goals a game on home ice. Florida's only averaging 3.27 on the road because they do all their damage at home too. The Wild 5-1 in their last 6 against Atlantic Division teams. They're 8-2 in their last 10 overall. They're 4-1 in their last 5 against teams with a winning percentage above 600. Florida has gone just 1-7 in the last 8 meetings in Minnesota. They've gone 8-18 in the last 26 meetings overall. I like the Wild here. I wouldn't be surprised if they win outright because they are just torching people when it comes to playing on home ice. I believe the stat was in their last 3 home games, they've tallied, I believe it's 18 goals.
Yeah, quick note to Chris. I'm sorry, to Nathan. No, it's Tom. Okay, I see Tom. Tom, the Hurricanes are at home tonight.
Yep, we got them coming up too.
Yep, and Paul wants to know.
They'll be further down the page, but
yeah, Paul wants to know, Chris, if the Wild or the Panthers are going to go over.
I think the possibility is definitely there. I mean, you're looking at, like I said, you're looking at two high-scoring teams. Minnesota's, like I said, they've averaged 6 goals a game in their last 3 at home. They average 4.5 as it is, and we know Florida can score. I think going over is probably a pretty safe bet. In fact, I think I put that down in the shot in the dark segment just because, I mean, just look at the way these teams score. I mean, they're scoring like it's, the halcyon days of Gretzky, Curry, Messier, and the Oilers in the 80s when everybody was winning, 7-6 and 6-5, as opposed to the way you see now, where you're lucky half the time if it's 3-2. But just to further your point about the over, it's gone over in 7 of the last 9 meetings between these teams. Florida's seen it go over 4 of their last 5 as a road favorite. Minnesota's seen it go 10-2-1 in their last 13 against Atlantic Division teams, and 13-3 in their last 16 on one-day rest. I think 4-3 might be the low end of the scoreboard in this one.
Any idea about Missouri and Mississippi State in college basketball, Chris?
God, Mississippi State is completely fallen apart. I thought they were going to be
pretty bad
a tournament team for a while, and then all of a sudden they've lost 6 out of 7, 7 out of 9. They've dropped to 5-7 in the conference. And I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not like they've lost to bad teams. They lost to Arkansas by 8. They lost to Tennessee by 9. LSU beat them by 4. Alabama beat them by 5. Their only blowout in this stretch was when they got trounced by Texas Tech in the SEC Big 12 Challenge. My big concern with Missouri is the same concern that I have with them seemingly every year. Can they score enough points? I mean, you're looking at Missouri's output of late in their last several games. They scored 54 against Auburn. They scored 50 against Iowa State. They scored 65 against Florida. They scored 62 against Vanderbilt. And they scored 57 against Arkansas. Their 2 games over 70 were against Texas A&M and Ole Miss. Ole Miss is another team that's completely fallen off the rails. You have to wonder how long Kermit Davis is going to survive with the fact that they're under 500 now. And, Texas A&M, Buzz Williams, he was off to a hot start, and then all of a sudden his team has gone right down the toilet. They had lost 8 straight before beating Florida the other night. 12.5 is a big margin, especially when you're a struggling team like Mississippi State is right now. Ben Howland has got to try to figure some things out. Obviously, injuries have taken a toll, and the fact that, Iverson Molinar can't do it all by himself. I would probably take the points. These teams will meet again Sunday in Columbia. It's the ever-popular home-and-home set to get these conference games out of the way. I just don't have enough faith in Mississippi State right now to beat anybody by double digits.
Well,
And Jim has frozen. So we'll take a look. Yeah, Wild and Panthers overall, like Paul said, yeah, I think that one's going to go over. And I think you're right, Nathan. I think Mississippi State will win the game, but it's going to be a game that's probably going to fall in that 6 to 8, maybe a 10-point range. But I can't trust Mississippi State to actually win by double figures over anybody. Like I said, when you lose 6 out of 7, I know they've played good teams, but just because you play good teams and lose close doesn't mean that you're on the level of those teams. And that's something that they're going to have to try to fix. And there's Jim. He had to refresh himself.
Back.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes
you
it's
up.
refreshing. Yeah, I know. I heard. I had to come back here and heat things up a little bit. Cleveland State tonight. Did you see that one from Ryan?
Yeah, I saw it. I've got Cleveland State coming up in
okay.
one of the bottom slides. I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah, we'll get to them. All right. So where are we going next there, boss?
Well, that was the highlights of the show because we said that we were going to keep it to 2 of each.
That's right. So we are now at a point where I guess you want to talk a little bit about the Daytona 500.
Sure, we can talk about the Daytona 500.
Anybody out there interested in Daytona 500?
I know Matthew was because he asked about it earlier in the week.
Yeah, he did. It's going to be an interesting situation because we saw as I said in our pre-show when Chris and I were talking, on Wednesday you saw the Hendrick cars do very well, putting two teammates on the pole. Kyle Larson being the defending champion of the of the NASCAR season, and then in a big surprise last night, it was a good night for Ford because the Roush team came back with Brad Keselowski now as a team owner with the likes of Roush Fenway, and they did well. Penske has reason to be happy because for all but about the last 5 laps of the race, when Joey Logano got into trouble, they had a good time. So it should be a wide open race, Chris. I think that the next gen cars for both Rick Hendrick and for, of course, Roush Fenway, and that doesn't count all the other situations with Toyota. Toyota didn't have a very good duel last night, but that doesn't mean that they can't have a good 500. So
right, and Denny Hamlin is, I think, still going off as a co-favorite. I think Larson is right there with him. Of course, the first thing I think of when I think of Daytona, of course, is what happened with the late Dale Earnhardt,
right.
back in 2001. No matter how many times they go back to that track and everything else, it sticks out in people's heads. I mean, let's be honest. And it's weird, when you watch a race and you see the 3 car out there, but it's not him, and now you don't see Dale Jr. out there either.
Right.
But talking about the race Sunday, Hamlin has won. He's the only guy to win 3 times that's active out there. Which is going to be interesting. You look at Harvick has won twice, but he had his struggles of late. Keselowski's won once. Logano, of course, won in 2015?
Yeah.
I know a lot of people like the Busch brothers. Personally, I find Kyle to be a bit of an arrogant guy, but it'll be interesting to see what he does. And Larson, Larson is basically the Lazarus of NASCAR because he was given up for dead during the pandemic. Right. And then, now he's back. And what do you think of Ryan Blaney, Jim? Do you think he's got a shot?
Yeah, sure. Blaney's got a good car. He's got a good crew chief and a good, a good team. So I wouldn't be surprised at all with Ryan Blaney. The thing with Daytona, there's 3 things you have to pay attention to about Daytona. Number 1 is the physicality that it takes on you as a driver. Okay. You're going 500 miles on a super speedway. Okay. So that means that any little tick, because everybody's going, at or around 200 miles an hour. So Matthew likes Blaney too. Good to know. So, at any point in time, if you have a momentary lapse of, of concentration, it could cost you seriously. There's always a wreck. And more often than not, 2 or 3 that collects a bunch of cars that are either in contention at the time or even leading at the time. So you have to be careful of that. And something this year that really is a lot different than times in the past, and that is that supply chain issues, right? They've had supply chain issues, which means that there's a less amount of tires that they can use. There's less amount of parts that they can, fix. So as a matter of fact, there was a lot being made last night on the broadcast that, when these cars normally would do a burnout when they win or they do something when they win, they got to be careful because the car they're running last night is the car they're starting in the 500. So, in the old days, you may qualify one car and then come back and use the second car for the race, but that's not the case anymore. You've got to play it out. So there's attrition, there's physicality, there's trying to stay out of trouble. And on the super speedways, you've got teaming up, which you saw last night, where somebody will push you and help you draft your way through. It doesn't usually work out well for people who go freelance, right? If you don't have somebody pushing behind you, if you get out of line, you could be,
you can go from fifth to 30th in a hurry.
Right, in a lot. Look in the back of the field. There's some really good racers who got caught up in that race last night where the wreck. You got Eric Almirola, and Eric's due. I think Eric is due to have a big season. Perhaps it's this year.
Yeah, I see he's going to start 38th because of finishing back in the second duel there.
He got
Austin
whacked.
Dillon's back there too.
Austin Dillon, yeah. There's a lot of good people in the back of the pack. Now, normally you would concern yourself with that, but at the Daytona 500, it's not something you have to really worry about much. You can work your way up.
Like you said, you got Harvick and Logano in the middle of the pack.
Yeah. So, I mean, these guys are used to driving and working their way up. So, and then, of course, there's the caution flags. You have no idea when they're going to come out. And it's going to be a long day. I mean, that's how Daytona works. I mean, Daytona is not, a cookie cutter easy situation. It's a super speedway. It's a tri-oval. There's only one of those, which can give people problems. It's the time of year when sun becomes an issue later in the day. That's another problem when you get blind spots. So it's going to be an attrition race, and as it always is. And so we'll see.
Now, let me ask you this, Jim. Do you think experience is a big factor for some of these guys? Like we said, Hamlin's won 3 times. Harvick's been there forever. Does that give them an advantage over somebody like an Almirola or a Larson or even a Logano?
Yeah, no question. What it does do, this, Chris, is it takes a driver who may not have as a car that is as fast. Let's put it that way. Let's say, pick a guy. You said Eric Almirola. If Almirola's got a really good car and Logano is not that far behind him from a car standpoint, but, is not quite as fast as he is, Logano's wiles and his ability to understand what's happened in the track with him before and the fact that he's comfortable drafting off of other people might get him by Eric, even though Eric's got a faster car. So it's really it's silly to say this because you would think this to be the case everywhere, but Daytona is a driver's track. You must pay attention to what you're doing. As we said earlier, you could end up in a crash even though you've done everything right. So you really have to be up there. And so, sure, it's one of those things where if you've been there before and you've been in those races and you've seen crashes and you know how to get through them, experience always is a big advantage and a big help. So that's something.
Any favorites you've got for the race?
I really think that it could be a good year for Logano. I mean, I know he's starting back in the pack, but he definitely is there. I wouldn't overlook Keselowski. I mean, because Brad's one of those guys who, is very easy to piss off people. I mean, he'll do things that, it's a little out of the box. I mean, Brad has always been that way. He dances to his own drummer. He's got a new crew chief with a new team. Okay. And it's funny at Daytona. You look at this, there's the elements of a driver, right? At Daytona, you're going to have a spotter. Spotters are incredibly crucial at Daytona because there's a lot of places of the track you can't see. From when you're down in the pits area, and the crew chief. So if you got a crew chief and a spotter and a driver who are all on the same page, it's no different than Matt Stafford, being on page with Cooper Kupp, right? Or no different than a pitcher and a catcher. in baseball. So there's a lot of analogies that fit NASCAR, and specifically the spotter and the crew chief and the driver, because if they're all working as one, then that can help you a lot, because spotters can see accidents before they happen or as they happen, they can guide you through. Crew chiefs can milk that, those tires a little extra, or the gas a little extra. Depending upon that, they may make the change and say, look, we don't need 4 tires, we can take 2 and get in out faster, save you time in the pits. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. But yeah, if I have a favorite, I like Keselowski because of how he ran last night. He ran a very smart race, and he was able to block. And that's a huge thing in Daytona, being able to block. So, he probably finished 39th, but right now I definitely would, I'm on the 6th car, which used to be Mark Martin's car back in the day. There's been a lot of success in that car, and maybe Brad will have it starting today or tomorrow, Sunday.
One of the cars that I'm looking at too is Alex Bowman. He raced pretty well yesterday. Mm-hmm. He's going off at plus 1,800, but you could also ride it if you want to go. Think he finishes in the top 3. That's at plus 400. Top 5 is still plus 190. Bowman, he's had some good runs.
Mm-hmm.
He's had some bad runs, everybody does. But, he looked good yesterday.
Yeah.
And he's probably due to actually have a better performance. He's only recorded 3 top 10s in 11 races at Daytona, but he's also won the pole twice there. So
right. So he knows how to run.
Yeah, he knows how to run there. It's just a matter of, can he, like you said, can he battle the attrition and everything else all the way through?
Yeah.
On the flip side, if you're looking for doormats, there's plenty of those. I mean, let's be honest. Quinn Huff is a guy that you might as well just pencil in to go to the back of the field, because how that guy still can drive on NASCAR, given how, the lack of awareness he has when it comes to track position and everything else, is galling after some of the stuff he pulled last season. But, I agree with you about Keselowski. I also think, Harvick has raced well here in his career. And you have to also watch out, as much as I don't like them, either one of the Bushes could be running near the front. Or they both could be near the front.
Right. I mean, Joe Gibbs Racing has got some very talented guys on their team. Interesting situation. Of course, we've got Floyd Mayweather's got a team, and they made the field. You got Michael Jordan and his team, and they're in the field as well. So some celebrity ownership, I guess, would be the way of looking at it.
And interesting enough, Jim, if Hendrick's team wins, that will move him into first place for most victories by an owner at Daytona with 16. He's currently tied with the Wood brothers.
Yeah. Well, and the Woods brothers have a new kid in their car, which might be helpful. And the other thing is that the Woods brothers are getting their engines from Roush Fenway, which is a good thing for them. Sentimentally, I always am a fan of the 21 car, which is the only car the Woods brothers have left in the situation.
Is that Di Benedetto?
Yeah. The thing, look, let's be honest. This is not the 1970s, so Rick Hendrick only needs, Rick Hendrick's ability to win and pass the Woods brothers is not, it may not happen Sunday, but it will happen soon enough. But it's going to be interesting race, and I'm also interested in seeing how Jacques Villeneuve and Greg Biffle do. I mean, Biffle's been off the radar for 5 years, and he's back.
It seems like longer than that.
It does. It seems like Greg's been gone for a while, but with COVID, it's like dog years. It's you're never quite sure what the heck happened.
And so just real quick for all of you guys out there that like interesting stats, the most Daytona races without a victory at Daytona International Speedway among active drivers. Got a guess, Jim?
You mean in this field?
Yeah.
Okay. Without a victory in Daytona or a victory?
Without a victory at Daytona, period.
Oh, okay. I'll go with Biffle.
Martin Truex.
Oh, that's a good one.
He's run 33 times at Daytona, never won.
Huh.
Finished in the top 5 3 times, finished in the top 10 5 times. He won a pole, never won.
Yeah. The interesting thing with Truex is he's always a top 10 driver. I mean, he doesn't win as much as you would think, but he's there constantly. And
of course, on the bright side, at least Truex has a long way to go because the record all time for guys that raced at Daytona without a win, Dave Marcis, 67 times went around the track.
Didn't get the check.
Never even won a pole.
Whoa, that's something. All right, well, guys, have a good time. Matthew was saying that Logano has a great spotter too. He does. He's got a good team there. So Nathan's feeling Logano. So we'll see what's going on. John, of course, wants to know about Dartmouth. They seem
they battle, but the problem is if you lose by 8 on the road, that doesn't mean you should be favored by 2 at home.
Yeah, nobody ever died for Big Green, folks. Their crew is a pretty good team. All right, so let's go for 2 for the money, right?
I'd probably take, the Big Green, the Disney movie with, Hamilton Porter from The Sandlot over Dartmouth when it comes to playing basketball.
So let's go to 2 for the show. 2 for the money. Right. I'm sorry.
Yep. Let's go for it here. Like we said, I'm sticking with Cornell over Dartmouth. I don't care if they're an underdog. I just can't. I can't get sold on a team that is, has a winning percentage of 250, winning percentage of 333 at home, being favored over anyone. I mean, let's face it, John. It's down to +1 now. So there you go. It was 1.5. Now it's back to 1. John, this would be like. Would you think that IUPUI should be favored by somebody? Let's say they play Robert Morris at home, let's say they play Robert Morris, at home after they lose to him on the road. Would they be favored in your opinion? I just can't get past it. Oh, I can't believe I have Cornell up there twice. That's a typo on my part. I'll fix that in a minute. Because on my other,
he likes him so much that he's got him twice.
It was an accident on my part. IPFWs, the Mastodons have been on a roll of late, and you got to watch out for them. They're going to go on the road tonight and take care of business against everybody's favorite team, the Green Bay Phoenix, who are 4-21. So look for that to prevail there. We've also got, like we said, the Stars over the Blackhawks because, let's face it, Chicago is not playing good basketball. Mm-hmm. And I like what that other one was supposed to be was Northern Kentucky. The Norse are another team that have been playing well of late. If you look at the numbers, Northern Kentucky has won, I believe it's 9 of 10. Yeah, 9 of their last 10, 3 in a row. They were 6-9. They're now 15-10. They're on the road here against Detroit Mercy. The Titans have come back to earth. They lost a couple in a row. And the one loss that the Norse have in that stretch was a 6-point loss at home to Detroit Mercy. I think the Norse are out for revenge. Darren Horn's team gets the win there.
Just a quick note to Super Sly. Thanks for the NASCAR breakdown, guys. We are more than happy, Super Sly, to give it to you. Kathy, you're losing me with NASCAR. Hang with us, Kathy. We got tons of other stuff. We have a lot of college basketball, which Chris just broke down, and some hockey. So we'll get to you too. And Kathy, it's okay. You can ask questions about anything that you like. We're here to try to help everybody out. And Nathan, of course, had a great line, which was IUPUI won yesterday, so I thought hell froze over, which is quite possible.
It very well may have. I mean, you'll have to find anybody that's up in Hell, Michigan, and ask him.
Right. And Walking Spotted Bear says that NASCAR has some easy value, drivers versus driver, and that's true.
Yep, Rory or the groups when they have the groups of 4,
Sure.
You always end up with somebody good, and then it's like 2 Timmy Hill and Joey Gase and
Right.
Scott Reichel.
Right.
And everybody knows that, Scott Reichel's not going to win because that's just his trademark.
Because he doesn't drive. Yeah.
And Timmy Hill is always in the back of the field, and Joey Gase can't run on the lead lap to save his life. As for picks tomorrow, if you want to message me on Twitter afterwards, I've got a whole bunch of them because I don't want to track up a whole bunch of stuff and get people confused with today's games and tomorrow's games. But if you want to hit me up on Twitter or whatever, I can get you some ones if there's any in particular you're looking at.
And same thing for Nathan. He wants Maryland, Nebraska tomorrow. So we'll get.
No, Maryland, Nebraska is tonight, but that's coming up.
Oh, is it? Okay,
Yep.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I missed it. Sorry. I only happen to be around 20 Maryland grads, so I should have known that. What's your Twitter handle? It's right there. It's Betting Royalty, right, Ryan?
Yep.
It's right there. Let me bring them full screen so you see. We will.
Yep, that's it. There's no space though.
There you go. You see it there, Ryan, buddy? Chris is very responsive. He's a good guy, says John Senna. Of course he is.
Yeah, don't let the word get out. I have a reputation to maintain.
Yeah, exactly. He's got a royal, definitely. Same for all of you. Hit us up over the weekend. We'll get back to you. All right, let's go for 4 for the show.
Right, and we'll move on to that here. We've talked about. Tom was asking about Carolina at home. The puck line has it going off at plus 145. The money line is minus 170. I like them tonight over Nashville. The Hurricanes should bounce back from that 3-2 overtime loss to Florida the other night. Let's face it, the Hurricanes play well at home. If you look at Colorado and Carolina and Minnesota, those are 3 very good home teams when you get right down to it. And that shouldn't say Vegas over Vegas, stupid thing. I was copying things over from one thing to the other, and it didn't copy right. It's Vegas over Los Angeles. The Kings playing, I think, the 3rd game in 4 nights for them. It's going to be an issue. Ohio plus 1.5. They're on the road over Kent State. That's going to be a really good matchup in the Mid-American. The Bobcats trying to hold off a whole slew of teams for the top spot in the Mid-American. You look at that conference right now. Ohio's 13-2, Toledo's 12-3, Kent State's 11-4, Buffalo's 9-4. Akron has fallen off because somehow they lost to Northern Illinois yesterday. Akron is fading, and I can't figure out why. They need to pick up the tempo or something because they're just not playing capable basketball. Kent State, they're a good team, but I just think Ohio with Vanderplas and Jason Carter and company is a little bit too much to handle. I like the fact that they're getting a couple points going on the road there. Look for that to pan out. And Cleveland State, I know Ryan was asking about them over Milwaukee. Cleveland State, not a very good basketball team. Milwaukee, not a good basketball team. Cleveland State, they bounced back, as I told John last week when we talked about after they lost to UIC and they were playing IUPUI, and John was talking about how the point spread looked like it was too high, and then it was 46-17 at the half. Cleveland State went rolling onto an 83-45 win. Same situation here, basically. Cleveland State coming off a 102-98 triple overtime loss at IPFW on Monday night. I feel bad for Milwaukee being the team that has to face them after dealing with that. That's the 2nd close loss in a row for Dennis Gates' team, and we saw how they bounced back against the Jaguars. I feel bad for the Panthers. Look for Cleveland State to get the win.
Okay, let's move to the menu because we have plenty of stuff to do here.
Yeah, it's a big night for the Ivy League. Like Jim said, Fridays are always big for the Ivy. You're going to be looking at some entertaining games here. Harvard over Columbia. I know Tommy Amaker's team is reeling. I have to wonder if Amaker had any issues with the fact that, it all came out about how Krzyzewski picked John Shire to replace him over Amaker because he wanted Amaker to come back and be an assistant for a year, and which would bump somebody else off the staff for him to take the job. I personally think Amaker's done a fine job at Harvard. I don't think he should play second fiddle to anybody. But I look for them there. We talked about Princeton and Brown. Princeton 17-5. You have to give them the advantage, even going on the road against Brown. We just saw asking about Nebraska and Maryland. Nebraska's coming off their first Big Ten win of the season. They beat Minnesota by double figures. We're talking about a Maryland team that is reeling. I feel bad for Danny Manning walking into that dumpster fire.
Mm-hmm.
Maryland's lost 5 straight. They now have to go on the road. Eric Ayala is questionable, and he's their leading scorer for Maryland. And let's face it, Nebraska's actually found some offense. They like to run, and that's going to test Maryland's depth and Maryland's talent. I'll take the points.
Maybe we should take a screenshot because this might be the only time you see a Nebraska Cornhusker team as a favorite here.
Yeah, it's kind of like Austin Peay earlier in the week.
Right, exactly. I just wanted to make sure that hell hadn't froze over. I looked out the window real quick. So.
Yeah, Yale -4 over Penn. Both teams have played well since going into Ivy League play. I mean, both teams struggled in non-conference play. Yale was 6-8. Penn was 3-10. Since then, Yale has gone 8-1 in the Ivy League. Penn has gone 8-2. Oddly enough, Yale's one loss in the Ivies was an 8-point loss at Penn in January. But since then, they've won 6 straight, including a sweep of Harvard. They've beaten Princeton. I like Yale at home. James Jones seems to have his team going in the right direction. Steve Donahue, I'm glad that his team's back up to near 500, but it's tough to go up and beat Yale in New Haven.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you know that, Jim. You've been up there. I'm sure.
It is. It's tough, and Yale's got some good fans, which Penn has good fans. Yale has good fans. For the most part, only Columbia and who do we have earlier? The game Dartmouth. That's what I was trying to remember. Dartmouth and the folks at Columbia are not such good fans. Other than that, the Ivies they don't have big gyms, but they show up.
Right, and guys, I know you can disagree with Nebraska. That's fine. I just don't have faith in a Maryland team that's lost 5 in a row and might not have their leading scorer. As it stands, Danny Manning has said, quote, that he's been taking part in practices, but not all of the practices. So you have to wonder, he didn't play the other night against Purdue. Is he going to play tonight? Nobody can tell you because they don't know either. If he doesn't play, Maryland's in trouble. As it is, they haven't played that well anyway. And I just like the points at home. Butler +8 over St. John's. St. John's, I swear, is bipolar. They can't figure out what they're going to do from one game to the next. They lose to Villanova. They lose to Connecticut. They beat Xavier. They lose to Providence. They beat Georgetown. They beat Butler the first time, but they only beat Butler by 3. Let's not forget, this is a St. John's team that lost to Pitt earlier this season, which was horrifying considering how bad Pitt's been. I'll take the points in Butler. I don't like Butler that much, but I like St. John's less here. VCU -3 over Richmond. The battle of teams from the Richmond area there. It's at VCU. I think VCU will prevail in that contest. Yes, I thought the Spiders might have something for VCU too, but Richmond's another team. They have a ton of guys with experience, but they just haven't played as well as you'd think. They lost to VCU by 2 at home. They lost to George Mason in overtime last week. But they've also got trounced by 27 points by St. Joe's, and let's face it, St. Joe's isn't any good. So I can't figure Richmond out either. I figured with all those guys coming back, Golden and Sherrod and Gilliard and KO, that they would have been a lot better than what they've been. I figured they'd be at or near the top of the A10. Instead, they're sitting right in the middle. They're 6th with an 8-5 mark, but they're 3 games behind Davidson. They're 2 behind Dayton and VCU, and they're still behind St. Louis and St. Bonaventure. Richmond's one of those teams where you can't figure them out. I don't think they know what the problem is either. Unfortunately, Moody's going to get whacked for it.
Mm-hmm.
Florida, Minnesota, we said I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. That'll end up over. Nashville, Carolina, I don't know. I think I lean towards the under just because it was getting plus money, and I think that, with Anderson and Saros, you got two good goaltenders. Carolina leads the league in goals against. I think that one will probably be a 3-2 game. It might edge over with an empty netter, but I'll hedge my bets on the under. Dallas and Chicago, I look to go over. The over's gone over, or it's hit in the last, I think, 7 meetings between these teams. We saw Chicago have a total of 11 last night in that 7-4 loss to Columbus. Dallas should take advantage of that and push the number over. And the Kings and the Knights, I look to go over 6 just because Vegas is a good team. Jack Eichel should probably play better than he played Wednesday night. And the Kings, you never know what you're going to get out of them on either end of the ice.
So let's talk for a moment because we have, excuse me, because we have an interesting question because Kathy got to us early and wanted to know what your favorites were for some parlays tonight. So let's give her some of your favorite things going on for this evening.
Let's see. Well, as much as everybody is weirded out by the line, I think Cornell, like I said, IPFW. I like the Stars. I like Minnesota, as in the Wild. I like Carolina, and probably either Princeton or Cleveland State would be the 6th one I would put in there.
Okay.
Or if you wanted to play a total, I would look for Minnesota and Florida to go over, just because of the fact that those two teams light the lamp wherever they go.
Okay, Kathy, you got that? I'm sure you do. So that way, you got him from the man himself. And we don't guarantee anything here, but we certainly say that we're going to give you our best estimates of what might happen.
We try to hit more than we miss.
Yeah, and that actually works. So we've been pretty good at that. But like everything else out there, it's called betting for a reason. And it's not called sure thing, but we do the best we can. So, we're here. And Ryan, thank you for being here. By the way, before you guys leave, do us a favor, smash that like button, hit the subscribe button. And, we're here to serve, and we'd like to see how well you guys enjoy it. Okay, so by all means, comment below. We'll take a look at those comments. I always look for the comments and any of that stuff. So, we're interactive. We want you to be as interactive with us, okay? Because you're our little family here that comes and sees us every day. And all we're trying to do is help out, okay? Speaking of helping out, top of the hour, 3 o'clock, Scott and Scott will be there to do their best to help you out. And, back to the window, 3 o'clock right here on the Whiners and Whiners Sports Betting Network, okay? So, Chris, any final thoughts before we exit stage right here on a Friday?
Well, like I said, it's gonna be a good weekend for everybody that loves sports. You're gonna have a ton of good college basketball this weekend. Watch out for the mid majors because everybody overlooks them. But you're gonna see some good quality games there. So tune in for those. Obviously, like you said, the Daytona 500 is Sunday. The All-Star Game, for those of you that are fans of professional wrestling, the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view is tomorrow. I think it starts at noon Eastern time because they're in Saudi Arabia or something like that. So
yeah,
it means it doesn't have to clash with anything that you necessarily want to watch. But basically, enjoy it and, have a good time. And, just remember, like we always tell you, bet responsibly, because the worst thing you want to do is put yourself in a situation where, Vinny the leg breaker comes by and,
right,
wants his money.
You're playing behind the sticks, as they say in football.
Right.
Quick note, if you're a golf fan, Riviera is a fantastic course in Los Angeles. It's the Genesis tournament, which of course is the tournament afterwards where last year Tiger Woods was injured in the car accident. I like Jordan Spieth. He got off to a good start, and he plays Riviera very well. So if you're looking for a golf thing this weekend, Jordan Spieth might be something to look at. Okay. All right. So as Chris says, there's a whole lot of crazy going on, a lot of fun. And we got the NBA All-Star Weekend. We got NASCAR's Super Bowl, which they start right off the season with at Daytona, which means there's racing tonight with the with the trucks. There'll be the Xfinity race tomorrow, and then of course there'll be the 500 at 3:00 on Eastern time on Sunday. So there's plenty of stuff to watch. I think the closing ceremonies of the Olympics happens tonight, and then onward and upward. Okay, so plenty of good stuff to watch. Be safe out there, as Chris says. Bet wisely and bet responsibly, and come back and see us on Monday and tell us how you did, because we're going to be here. We're like death and taxes, folks. You can't get rid of us. We shall be here, and we shall be having some fun. So enjoy yourself. We enjoy ourselves talking to you guys. So have fun and use the BetMGM app or the Caesars Sportsbook when you do it, because they have been very good to us. As the Garrett Morse character on the old Saturday Night Live says, baseball been very good to me, and BetMGM and Caesars has been very good to us. So by all means, check them out too. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, gang.
Like I said, guys, if you need to find me, you see my handle right there. Feel free to reach out.
Absolutely. And I put it in the timeline, so it will forever be memorialized. If you miss anything, guys, remember you can always catch the podcast. Okay. On wherever you get podcasts, it's there. Just Parlays with Chris King. Okay. All right, cool. All right. Well, we'll see you on Monday. Everybody be safe, enjoy, and bet wisely.